Hi everyone, before we go on to the final stage, part 3, I'm just going to waffle on a bit. If you want to avoid all this and see the end results, I'll put the time in the top left hand corner. After taking loads of photographs of the lightning from above and all various angles, I was about to put this all away, and then late last night, must have been about 20 to 12, quarter to 12 at night, I realised I hadn't taken a picture from underneath. Sometimes not the best view for aeroplanes, but I thought, just out of interest, I need to take one from underneath. Now, because of all the fluffiness that's going on at the top there, I had to build some sort of jig or something to hold this in the upside down position, or seat it in the upside down position. So I made this Heath Robinson contraption, so the lightning would sit with its spine sat in these grooves I cut out. Ain't going to win any prizes, this scrap heat challenge, but it's just to serve a quick purpose, just so I could place the lightning in a safe seating position. So I brought the lightning over, turned it round, sat it on top, walked away, thinking it was secure, and then it decided to fall off and take flight, and then take a nosedive on the floor there, and of course bits went everywhere. I froze for what seemed like minutes. It was only seconds, thinking, oh God. So the damage was a rear tail came off, one of the wing tanks, the hood, the canopy, the ladders, pitot boom, and the wings took a heavy knock. There's a slight, they're stuck on solid, but they've given way, so there's a hairline crack running along the top of the join there. The radome nose came flying off because that's full of shot that went flying everywhere, but I was surprised how a lot of the pieces were intact. There's a few scuffs of paint being removed, but ho hum. So yeah, so I quickly tried to put the pieces back together again just for this one photograph, and did that. So yeah, in the photograph underneath, the ladder's gone, and so is the hood. But the other bits I just stuck on just for the one shot that I needed. So it's looking a bit sorry for itself. So I don't know whether I'll tidy it up, but I do need to box this because I'm itching to get on with the next project, which has been sat on the shelf now for a month. And to be quite honest with you, I've been distracted by it. I almost stopped this build so I can get on with that. Like a kid in a candy store, I just want to get on with it. So sorry about that, sorry I bored you about that, but I thought some of you might be interested. So yeah, I was surprised that the red tops held in place, and the undercarriage doors. So that's enough of my story of woe, and let's see what I did with the last part. So I've just applied the white, so I'm going to leave that to set and cure for a while before I add the masks on. So ready for the blue now. Main problem now is to try and match the colour blue with the other decals. So that's the last colour I did, the red. So I've peeled the masks off and just sealed that paint in with a coat of Tamiya satin varnish. Let that dry, and then I'll peel the rest of the masks off, and we'll see whether it's worked or not. Either way, what's done is done, and I'll have to live with it. So all the masks are off now. Let that dry thoroughly. There's a bit of bleed here and there. I'll probably try and scrape that excess off with a sharp scalpel blade, and then I can add a wash to these roundels. So I've added the masks and ready to paint this canopy for the second time. I'm hoping that the new shape masks will give a better visual representation of the hood canopy. I won't know until it's sprayed and all this is peeled off. I also am a bit worried about the knock-on effect that this new framework will have on the front windscreen. But as I said, until it's all peeled off, I won't know whether I need to tackle the windscreen later on. We shall see. This shape was created by that tracing I showed you earlier on, and then I scanned that in and drew some artwork up. And then cut out the shape. Now of course, because of the complex curves on this canopy, it didn't fit exactly right. So I just end up using the front and the end of the cut mask and then join those two pieces up. So that's all the decals added now, I think. Yes, that's all done. Mixture of the Trumpeter and the extra decal ones. The Trumpeter ones went down with no issues, but I was limited because the decals are meant for a camouflage scheme rather than an overall silver. The only thing I would mention is this decal here, this Trumpeter one here. I had to cut it into 3 pieces, otherwise it would just taper off at an angle, and even then it still doesn't sit right. The extra decal went down fine. They are beautiful, lovely and crisp, sharp in colour. I would have liked them to embed into the detail a bit better, but after the trouble I had with the large roundel, I wasn't going to mess around. Last thing I want to do is start masking things like this. I just played safe. The only thing I would point out is this decal here, these checkered bits either side. On the actual instructions, the red square is at the bottom. It was only by chance that I was cross-referencing looking at photographs of this lightning in the actual squadron, and the red square goes at the top looking at the photographs. Even though they're black and white, you know that the dark square is the red. So I could be wrong, but I don't think so. So I had to quickly take off these decals and then reposition them so that the red square's at the top on both sides. Just something to bear in mind or question if you ever use these. So I'm just going to let them dry. So as far as I'm concerned, I've finished. I've messed around with this long enough. It's about time I assembled it all. The canopy is finished. Still something odd about it. I don't know what it is, but that will be shown in the up position anyway, I think. The wings are finished. I could have spent a bit more time on the surface, i.e. the metal effect. What else? The radome filled with lead shot. I don't know whether it'll be a tail sitter, even with all that resin at the back there. The only issue with doing this is that that poor nose gear is going to suffer. So I'm going to be very careful. The other issue I've got is that while I was messing around with these undercarriage legs, I dropped one on the floor and it gave way at the weakest point, which is the pin holding the wheel. I've glued it back. I'm not too sure which undercarriage leg it is, but I glued it back and it's quite secure, but I'll be amazed if it takes all this weight on that poor pin. But luckily, because of the good fit into the resin part, I shall dry fit these legs. If it does give way, I can take it out and fix the problem off the model. So the next thing I'm going to do is to attach the wings. Now the major parts have been glued on, the wings, and left to cure and set overnight. I can get on with the rest now. There are top missiles. 3 pieces make them up. Very basic. Even in 148, we've been pulling faces. So, but they add a bit of colour. Now I'm just going to dry fit the undercarriage because of the issue I mentioned earlier. the seat. So just leaving with the pitot boom and the canopy, and I think I'm all done. I did have in mind earlier on that I might add access ladders to the Lightning, but it was just an idea at that time at the beginning. I didn't take any shots of the actual build stage of this because I didn't know whether it was going to work or not. I couldn't find any decent drawings or any drawings that would relate to proportion to the fuselage of the Lightning. Nothing of any note anyway. So I ended up cutting out strips of paper, different widths and lengths, marrying it up against the kit's fuselage and just seeing whether it looked right. The clearance of the red top missile and things like that. Once I was happy with it, I used this evergreen channeling, 2.5, cut it into 3 sections, as you can see here. Once I got the angles and dangles right, put these plates on, married it up again to the fuselage just to make sure it looked visually okay. I then did the other side. And with something as complicated as this, it's treating it as little assemblies, trying to think about the overall job because it'll just put you off. So once one side had been done, it was actually mirrored to the other side, and then I did the steps, and then these bracing brackets here, and so on, and then just added to it. But I thought I'd show you how this was painted and how I got it to look a bit worn and beaten up. So I'm going to apply Vallejo metal colour, white aluminium or just aluminium, doesn't really matter. But before I do that, I've applied a Tamiya matte white. I find that the Vallejo will adhere better to a matte surface than a plastic's shiny surface. So late last night I applied this first coat. This is a watercolour coat, lemon yellow and yellow ochre. These are watercolours, by the way. I added a bit of detergent, or should I say Sanex shower gel, just a little bit, just so it doesn't bead on the Vallejo metal surface. Very light coats, making sure that each coat was dried before I applied the next one. So this is the shadow colour, I call it, the dark colour. So I need to add a highlight, which will probably be this lemon yellow, and I may add a bit of white, just tone it down a bit. This time I shouldn't have to add any detergent or shower gel because it's going onto a very matte surface, so it should take. Bearing in mind though that that's a watercolour on top that I haven't sealed, and I don't want to seal. So when I add the highlight colour, I've got to make sure it doesn't activate this colour applied here. So once again, light coats, let it dry, and then another coat. I'm just going to add a bit of white just to tone that down a bit. It's a bit bright. Now the consistency, I play it by ear. You don't want it too thin, but you don't want it too thick, otherwise it'll start splattering and clogging the airbrush, even though it's watercolour. So the highlight colour loaded, and I'm just going to gradually add light coats from above and at the side here, and see what it looks like. And I'm just applying pure air now, just to dry that first coat. Remembering that we don't want to activate that dark colour underneath too much. Also got to bear in mind that with watercolours that they will dry a lot lighter than what we're seeing here. As I said, thoroughly drying each light coat, and I mean thoroughly drying. So you have to have a bit of patience with this method. Well, I think that'll do. I'll let it dry thoroughly, and then if I'm happy with it, I can start the next stage. So that watercolour paint's had about 3 hours, 4 hours to dry. And the next thing to do is to scrape some of it off and hopefully reveal the much harder wearing Vallejo paint underneath. So just using a toothpick or a stiff brush even, you can start taking some of that paint off. And just do it in small bits first, and then you can always go back and take a bit more off. And then sometimes it's just a matter of manhandling it. And see how it's showing the Vallejo paint underneath. And sometimes less is more. So I'm just going to brush any loose bits off. As I said, you could go on and on. I think that's enough. Once I'm happy with this, I shall seal it all in with a coat of satin varnish, Tamiya. Let that dry and then add a wash. So after I was happy with the amount of watercolour paint that I scraped off, I've sealed it all in with some Tamiya varnish. One thing I should have mentioned that I missed, once you've applied a silver paint, whether it's Tamiya, a lacquer or Vallejo, seal it in and let it dry. I get a bit blasé sometimes and take the chance. Sometimes you can actually scratch the silver paint off, the Vallejo anyway. I think it works pretty well. You could use a dry brush with silver paint on it, or you could use the hairspray method. Entirely up to you. It's just a method I prefer. I think it gives a better effect. Also, I've been doing this for a long time and it doesn't always work. So if you are going to give this a go, experiment first.